He's hurt them a lot because he hasn't developed as the quarterback that everybody thought he would be after his rookie season. And the criticisms coming from Troy Aikman are valid. You can look at the last game that they played against the Texans on Sunday night, and you can see the decision-making was bad, the accuracy was awful, and then the overall quarterback play was just not at a level that you would expect the team to be able to compete for a championship, especially in the NFC this season. Dak Prescott hasn't improved. He hasn't developed, and as a result, this offense has become stagnant. You look at the first red zone possession that they had, that 3rd and 2, when you motion Cole Beasley over, you recognize that you got man coverage because Jonathan Joseph is following him. And rather than taking the quick out to Cole Beasley in a one-on-one situation where he's at the sticks, you throw the swing screen, knowing that the linebacker is tracking Ezekiel Elliott? How does that make sense? The interception that he threw before halftime to Kareem Jackson when he was targeting Tavon Austin on the bang 8. Yeah, it's a ball that Tavon Austin should probably catch, but it wasn't an accurate throw. The throw that he had that got intercepted early in the second half when he was targeting Deontay Thompson on the comeback route. Another bad throw, and you can point to the accuracy issues that Troy Aikman was talking about. But again, those are just examples that are highlighting Dak Prescott not evolving as the quarterback that the Dallas Cowboys need him to be if they're going to try to compete for a championship.
Man, just look at the 7 teams in the league scoring 20 points or fewer. And what do they all have in common? The Jaguars, they ain't got a quarterback. Broncos, they don't have a quarterback either. The Dolphins, they're not sure. The Titans, man, we thought they had a quarterback last year and a half, tells us differently, and he's been hurt. Then there's the Cowboys. Cardinals changed quarterbacks, went to a rookie. Bills changed quarterbacks, went to a rookie. I mean, that's the common thread. Some of them have good coaches, some have bad. Some have good offensive lines, some have bad. Some have Zeke at running back, some don't have a running back. Some of them got good wide receivers. I think Dolphins got a handful of exciting wide receivers.
They really do.
But what do they all have in common? A big question mark or a big zero at quarterback. So, like, you pick what you want Dak to be. Is Dak a question mark or is he a zero? But he's not an answer. Right now, he's not an answer. I know that. I thought he was an answer. There's not been a player I was more wrong about after his first year than Dak Prescott that I can remember. I've been wrong about a lot of guys coming out of college. I think that's really hard to project. I thought Johnny was going to translate, Johnny Manziel. Like, I've been wrong on a lot of those. But usually, once you see a guy play for a year, you know. Man, I thought I knew, and you and I would argue about it, saying, man, that he's a system quarterback, it's the pieces around him. I thought he was a special player. He has looked nothing like that the last year and a half.
Clearly, the Cowboys don't know either. It's not just people analyzing. It's not just fans. The Cowboys want to know, because once they know, they can take him, they can lock him up, and they can have the future, and they can build around him. And it almost feels like they're being hamstrung because they don't know, is this it for Dak? Is our next big move to be to go out and look for a quarterback, or are we going to ride this out with him and Zeke? How do they come to that decision?
This is what the Cowboys have to do. And I got a lot of respect for Troy. And Troy is not a guy to just jump out there and say something hot to try to criticize someone. He understands football. He's played football at a high level since he was a kid. He's played the quarterback position. He understands the quarterback. And here of recent, Troy is starting to study the college quarterbacks because he's starting to cover the NFL draft. So he's watching how these guys transition. And the expectations for people like Troy, because they see what's out there, is from a coaching standpoint, from an information standpoint, their expectations are higher. Troy also saw him in 2016 as a starting quarterback in the league. Now, where Troy and other people are, we can't blame just everything on Dak. He's only had 2 real off seasons to try it up. And last year, he got surprised. Jason Witten, he was not expecting him to retire. He expected them to move on from Dez Bryant because that's what he expressed to the ownership and the coaches, what he thought was best. Because if he didn't do that, Dez Bryant would still be there. Jason Witten caught the franchise by surprise. But they have to support this quarterback because the jury's still out on Dak. You can't evaluate a quarterback until you put some weapons around them. You can't say, hey, I want you to come into the league and be a force multiplier. No, I'm going to put some weapons around you, and then I'm going to decide if you are that force multiplier. And I just believe that his overall learning was hurt because what happened to Witten. Because if he had another year with Witten, we wouldn't be having as many problems. They only need one wideout if they had Witten. Now they don't have a tight end. They only have Cole Beasley, and the results of their offense, that's what it looks like. They have one receiver. So the Dallas Cowboys have to make a major investment. We wouldn't be talking about Ezekiel Elliott if they didn't have all them first-rounders and all that money in front of them. We'd be saying, hey, you know something? Let's wait to evaluate him. So we need to be careful with Dak. Yes. He should be more accurate. He can't muscle the football, and I need greater anticipation out of him. But Dallas Cowboys also have not done him a solid by those wide receivers that they have out there that are not number ones, twos, or number threes.
No, I'm with you, CC. They don't have the right playmakers around him in the passing game, but some of the decision-making things are inexcusable from Dak at this point. Like, you see the fronts and coverages that you're facing because teams are concerned about Ezekiel Elliott in that running game. You've got to be able to take advantage of one-on-one coverage, especially outside of the numbers, and he hasn't been able to do that. You've seen inaccurate throws. You've seen some timing issues. Now, in part, that's on the receivers, but also that's on the quarterback. And so I can't excuse certain things when it comes to the passing game. Okay, you don't have dynamic playmakers. We all get it. But in part, if you're a quarterback that's lobbying for one of those long-term contracts, which he is, which you heard some of the chatter during the preseason about, then you've got to be able to help those receivers out, even though it's not the most talented group.
And I understand there's three components to a highly successful aerial attack: the scheme, the quarterback, the wide receivers. And I would say Cowboys are lacking in all three. I'm not impressed by the offensive scheme as far as the creativity of Scott Linehan's offense. They obviously don't have the wide receivers, and Dak hasn't been good. But what's also true is this: when the other team knows he's passing, this year, he can't pass. On play action, Dak's been awesome. 122 rating, over 9 yards in attempts. Plays every other passing play, a 66 rating, less than 6 yards per attempt. They drop him back and just say, go throw that football. He has not had any success whatsoever. Even in clean pockets, when he's not pressured, only Blake Bortles has thrown more interceptions. And that was his calling card his rookie year, was the 23 touchdowns to 4 picks. 23 touchdowns was good. The only 4 picks is what was elite, and that's what, along with Zeke and having Witten and Dez, made that team 13-3.
Does Jason Garrett hurt him in any way? A conservative approach, a safe approach? Is that maybe not what Dak Prescott needs?
Well, I think Jason Garrett is doing what's in the best interest of his football team. He recognizes that the strength of his team is the offensive line and the defense. So he's going to take advantage of having Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. And his thing with the passing game is just don't go out there and lose us the game. But in that, you still got to be able to make plays to keep the defense honest.
Right.
And Dak Prescott hasn't done that. So I look at it and saying, yeah, it's in part on Jason Garrett. He's being conservative with the play calling, recognizing how his team is built. But the quarterback has got to be able to make some plays, and Dak just hasn't been able to do it.
Listen, Jason Garrett deserves criticism because when you're the head coach of Dallas Cowboys, that's what the job calls for. But Scott Linehan, I've seen his offenses around the league. I've seen his offense in Dallas. When he had other personnel, they were explosive. I saw him in Detroit. They were explosive. I saw him in Minnesota. They were explosive and creative. So sometimes the reason why you keep putting third-grade books is because Johnny don't want to graduate to 4th or 5th grade. So some of that responsibility is on the quarterback. Jason Garrett, they have not gotten talent in Dallas and didn't do something with that talent, made it worse. So I'm not going to let people say that the quarterback not growing is because of the coach.
So some of my criticism on scheme you think is unfounded. You think that the scheme looks rudimentary because that is the only scheme maybe the personnel can deal with.
Yeah, look where they came from. Dez couldn't move. They had Witten. Witten was the only guy in the offense who could move. Now they don't have a tight end, don't have a number 1 receiver, only have a slot receiver. What type of creative offense are you going to run? Like, you don't need a PhD, but I need you to at least have a GED, and they ain't got that right now. So that's part of the problem. We like to blame the coaches, but sometimes the students and everything and what they can learn, it prohibits them from being explosive.
And Dak Prescott's going to have his hands full against a tough Jaguars defense coming up this weekend. Chris, stick around. Coming up, could the Eagles be going after L. Bell before the trade deadline? That's next. First things first.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with a high school diploma because that's all I got. I mean,